call to order the Avon Town Council meeting for September 2023. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, would you mind taking a roll call, please?
Greg Zuzen,
Present.
Don Loudon,
Present.
Robert Pope,
Present.
Tim Roberts,
Present.
Steve Eisenbarth.
Present.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is our consent agenda, which includes the check register for today, the approval of meeting minutes from our August 27th council meeting. Do you have any questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the check register for September 7th, 2023, and the approval of the minutes for August 27th, 2023. I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Tim Roberts,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Don Loudon.
4.
Next item on the agenda is the first of two public comment opportunities. You may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. This is not a Q&A session, but an opportunity to share your comments with the council. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close that section of public comment and move on to department updates. Who's going first? Steve. Mr. Moore.
Steve Moore, Public Works Director. I guess the first thing I'm going to do is show you our signs that we're putting up with our stormwater projects. Let people know that's what we're doing. We recently completed the drainage improvements on 625 by the AJAA fields in between 625 and the White Lick Trail. So you'll see one of these signs near the road, and you can actually see the straw mat and the riprap if you go far enough, and the check dam. So that's one of the projects we've done here recently, but we will be putting these signs at all of our projects from now on so people know what we're doing. 2, community crossings paving. We're at a lull right now. The contractor is out of town doing other projects, so he's going to come back to us in a couple of weeks. To finish our project. We have Galen Drive north and west both to do yet. We've got Raceway to do. Raceway is only going to be a mill and fill at this point. We're only going to do an overlay. We're not going to lower the road because we did some utility location. We did some daylighting, so drilled through the whole through the road and vacuum excavated to locate the utilities. Found out that the gas line and the water line are already at minimum depth of cover. So if we lowered the road, the water line could be in danger of freezing, and the gas line would be less than what the minimum is for safety. So we can't lower the road underneath the viaduct. So we're going to live with what we have. Sorry. We also then have the widening at the library has been completed. We still have to do the striping and touching up the landscaping, and a stone shoulder has to go in yet. 100 South reconstruction, we still have some punch list items. Our contractor went out there just this week, and they're updating their list of things to do and getting their contractors or subcontractors ready to come out there and trying to knock that one out. At the same time, on Dan Jones, we're doing really well with our progress on there. They got almost all of it under pavement. Just the approach to Westover Woods is the only thing that's not covered in asphalt right now. But by next week, we should be switching over to the opposite side of the road. So we should change traffic and be working on the other half. That should actually go a little bit even smoother than what we did this time. This time had a lot of the trunk line for the storm sewer. The next side just has the extensions of the sewer. So it should be a much faster phase next time. So we're going really well on that, going gangbusters. What else we have? Just some things coming up. We have the heavy trash day coming up, and that is October 14th at Gable Park at the Salt Barn, like we normally do. So October 14th is our heavy trash day. And that's pretty much it, except for one of the cool things we're going to be doing is some staff training next week. to be able to use our cell phones to reset and reprogram our traffic signals. So if I get called in the middle of the night and say something's flashing, instead of having to crawl out of bed, I just reach over and I hit my button and reset the lights. So that's going to be fun for me. So
Does that give you more green time? Is that what it does for you personally?
it gives me personal green time. And that's the other thing. If there's a special event going on and someone, like the school calls up and said, hey man, we're backed up like crazy, I could actually override the signal and give more green time at a moment's notice if I needed to do that. And then it'll automatically revert back to base time after my, if I say it's for 15, 20 minutes, it reverts back to base time. So that's kind of cool.
It is good.
Any questions?
No.
Thanks, Steve. Ms. Pride.
Good evening, Shelby Pride, Parks Director. We have onboarded the AJAA staff as town employees. We did that 2 weeks ago. We are working with staff to fully transition everything to be with the town. We met with the clerk treasurer's department last week, made sure everybody understood processes and how things work under the town. So we're really excited that we're moving forward with that still. Our farmers market wrapped up last week. We had a great season. We did not cancel due to weather or rain or severe anything. So my event staff worked really hard to make sure that everything was accommodated. We moved people to it's on pavement, but to the shadiest part if they needed it to accommodate them. So I wanted to give a shout out to my staff and all of our farmers market vendors and the attendees for a great season. Our event staff is working on events and programs for next year. So we're hoping to get at least the first half of the year events and programs on the schedule by the end of November, and then follow up with the rest of the year by the end of December. So everything will be on the community calendar by the end of this year. Ryan and I still meet with Context Landscape Architects bi-weekly to continue planning for park development and different projects for the department. So that's what we've been up to. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
Come on, gentlemen. One of you. Sean?
Hi, Sean Stoops, Chief of Police. Officers Adam Quilter, Stephen Carrier, and Cameron McDaniel all graduated from the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy August 18th. All three of them are completing their field training program now and will be released very soon to work on their own. So we'll be happy to have them out there helping take on some of the workload. Officer Eric Cheek has completed all of his field training and is now working a regular shift on his own. Officer Cheek is also an advanced firearms instructor and will be joining our firearms instruction and training team. If you recall, Officer Cheek came to us from Morgan County Sheriff's Department, and he's one of those examples of what developing a good culture and a good benefit package can do to attract and retain good candidates and recruits for our department. And so we owe a lot of that thanks to all of you to make sure that we have the tools we need to do that. Officers Clark and Childers are well into their field training program already. Officer just last week, actually, this is his second week. He got in, he was an alternate, so we were able to get him into the academy. Unfortunately, the other two won't get in until the next session. So they'll be doing field training until this academy class graduates, and then they'll switch with Officer Copley. The Avon Police Department still has one officer vacancy. We'll be starting another hiring process very soon. So please follow our social media pages and the town's website to see when and how to apply for a position with our agency. And you can also see all the criteria and everything else that you need as far as information goes to apply with our department. In August, a notable note in our statistics, officers made 457 traffic stops in their efforts to reduce traffic accidents and related traffic issues. Even though we've had an influx of traffic and population, our statistics related to traffic accidents, both personal injury and property damage accidents, are trending in the norm, even with an increase in traffic and population. So we haven't went we haven't went to reduce the trend yet, but we are clearly maintaining, handling that influx of extra traffic and so forth. Officers Pete and Michael and Officer Whittle were both recognized at the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute luncheon for their efforts in the fight against impaired driving. Both were selected for having the most OWI arrests recently. Officers Michael and Richards are also being recognized by Mothers Against Drunk Driving and for their efforts for the past year. And they both received awards and a pretty neat baseball bat that kind of goes with that. And it all took place down at Victory Field. So pretty neat day for them. Unfortunately, we didn't all get to go see because that was also the same day of National Night Out. So we were a little busy. Officer Sims and K9 Reese both completed their training in July, which entailed a 5-week patrol school and 3 weeks of narcotic detection school. So they're out and working, and can't wait to see what good results they bring. Lieutenant Steve Barton was selected by the Central Indiana Police Foundation Officer of the Month as the Officer of the Month. Candidates had to be nominated, and they had to demonstrate their ability to be excellent team players, staying positive, engaging in proactive policing, being a great community servant and leader, being someone who constantly does their job well and deserves a pat on the back. And Lieutenant Barton met all of those requirements and even more. So we congratulate him on his achievement and thank him for all he does for our department and community. He received a nice gift package, including a couple tickets to his choice of a Colts game. So if you want to, give him a call and befriend him, he might take you to the Colts game. I don't know. We have our annual blood drive on September 12th. It starts at 2 p.m. That's next Tuesday. This is a pretty important event because there is a blood shortage going on right now. And the blood that you donate could be the blood that you receive on your own, even after a car crash or some other unfortunate accident. So please go to our website. The town's website has all the information and a link to register for a time slot. Walk-ins are also welcome, but if you do have an appointment, the appointments will be taken in preference over the walk-ins. And that's done right here in the town council chambers next Tuesday. In your packet, in addition to all the other information that's in there, you will also have a copy of a draft of a job description for a new position that we want to try to create for the Avon Police Departments, and it's an intelligence analysis position. And it kind of gives a very detailed description about the duties and responsibilities of that position. And that's a new position, so that's something that you will see in the budget review. Be happy to answer any questions.
Just a comment. I really like this, well, I shouldn't say like, but the Indiana Crimes Guns Task Force, the inserts with the background, that was very interesting to see some of those things. That one gun that could be converted to a machine gun, it's like, wow, they're really taking some nice, weapons off the streets.
I don't know if nice is the right word.
But yeah, I know,
yeah,
I don't have the right word, but.
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job. And just to reiterate, what you're saying there, their work is really good. It doesn't always start here in this county. And you never really know what you're preventing. You don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of criminal cases that are ended outside of this county that most likely prevented them from coming to this county and committing those crimes with those guns. So their efforts are really, really good right now, and we really applaud them for that. So,
And I'm very happy to see Lieutenant Barton be recognized. Tim and I really appreciate him with the Citizens Academy. He does an excellent job, a great trainer, breaks down everything in detail, and is very patient and methodical. So he's very fine and very appreciative of that.
it was a no-brainer. As soon as they said who, the three of us looked at each other and said Steve. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Can't get out of it now, Bill.
Yeah, that was the last one I tried. Good evening, members of the council. I'm the planning director for the town.
It has been a while since I've gotten up here and given an in-depth update about the status of the planning division, and I really have no intention of breaking that tradition this evening. As you may be aware, Justin, our code enforcement inspector, left, and he left a few weeks ago. And so what we've done is we've combined the code enforcement inspector position with the MS4 inspector position, migrated Drew from public works into planning, and he's doing a really good job with the enforcement activities of the town out there. He's getting a lot of enforcement issues taken care of informally without, the whole notice to correct and those sorts of things. He's just getting out there talking to people and making it happen. So it's nice to see. And Amy, our receptionist, also left. And I know you're thinking we probably have a leadership problem in planning with half the staff leaving within a year, but I assure you, I'm doing my best. But we have just finished interviewing 4 individuals for the position, and we did have 3 really, really strong candidates. And so I anticipate next week offering that position to a candidate and hopefully have that position filled in 2 weeks. Last month at the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Gables of Avon had 2 variances pending. It was a sign variance. It was essentially to add some additional square footage on their freestanding identification sign to accommodate Academy Sports. It was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And this month we have 1 variance on the BZA's agenda, and it's an accessory use setback issue that has resulted from a eminent domain along Dan Jones and associated with the widening of that street. We had to knock down a house. That person wants to build a house, but they want to build it behind their existing pool. So we don't anticipate an issue with the Board of Zoning Appeals. We think that one will go pretty well. And in fact, I believe the town allowed the petitioner to file that because it was an eminent domain without any sort of fee on that one, although they did have to provide notice in accordance with the rules. Plan Commission, we have 1 item on the agenda in September. It's a convenience store on Avon Avenue. It's the old Superwash site. So they got through TAC finally, and so that's going to go for public hearing. And in October, I'm actually going to have a week off, first week in October, to take care of some personal issues, and so Ian is probably going to handle the October Plan Commission. It just depends on whether I can only have to take a week off or have to take 2 weeks off. If I can get by with just a week, I'll try to handle much of the business on the Plan Commission agenda myself. But if I have to take 2 weeks off, I think Ian will have to do it. And we do have a busy one in the October Plan Commission meeting. UDO text amendment, where we have discovered over the course of a year and a half of administering the ordinance that we have some weaknesses that we need to take care of. We also, Ian was here tonight, and he's going to add some text that you all desire. And so we would anticipate that will be heard by the Plan Commission in October. It's the Plan Commission's tradition really to hear it once, then think about it for a month and hear it again. So our plan is that it comes to you in December, but it could come to you in November. And there are 2 zoning amendments on there as well. The Habitat for Humanity wants to build an 18-unit single-family residential subdivision near a church on 100 South. And Village Place Townhomes, that L-shaped property just north of the Costco on 900. That's all I got for you. Mike is under the weather, so he did provide you the monthly memorandum. If you have any questions, I'd try to answer them as much as I can, but Mike knows that stuff better than me. Thank you.
I only have one question, Bill. Up here on Avon Avenue, there used to be I'll call it a barn, a shed, across from Marshall Meats where the Indian restaurant is going to go. And they started the demolition on that.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot of building materials and stuff just freely strewn across the property.
We got
some way that they can come and finish cleaning that up.
Yeah, Drew is working on that site. They also had some high weeds and grass issues and other sorts of things on there. So that's one of the properties Drew's working on, try to get that cleaned up. But yeah, we're working on that one.
Hopefully they pick up the trash before they cut the grass, so they'll have 3 times as much trash.
Yeah, they either had or are going to have a pre-construction meeting. So I would anticipate that you're going to start seeing construction activity on that site. So they can start building that shopping center there.
Thank you.
Which one? That I don't know. I'd have to get back with you on that one. I'll ask.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Jared? Didn't forget you. Uh-oh.
Oh.
No.
And the clerk treasurer.
We're here to do a joint update since Bill forgot about us. He wasn't the last one. So we're just going to go and do it as the forgotten group. Julie Loker, clerk treasurer, we're doing budget right now. That's my update.
Short and sweet.
Riveting. Thank you, Julie. Jared Wade, Communications Director for the town of Avon. Just a few quick things. First, a couple weeks ago, I was able to attend the AIM conference down in French Lick on behalf of the town of Avon. It was my first time attending. It was quite interesting. Met a lot of other municipalities, mayors. Had the pleasure of meeting Governor Holcomb for a brief moment as he walked by and had to go off to do something else. So it was neat to talk with other communications people in government, but also talk to other town managers, those that are in public works, other individuals like yourselves that are elected officials. So I appreciate Ryan allowing me to go down there and learn a bit and bring some nuggets of information back here to the town. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in the world of communications and marketing here in the town, primarily on our website and in the social media. We're trying to get some things corrected and changes that are happening or that have happened, that it's taking Meta, Facebook, Instagram, all those good places time. They're not quick to work with, and they make us jump through a lot of hoops to get simple things changed. So it just takes a lot of time out of my day to try to get those things fixed. But they're in the process of being fixed, which is good. I want to give a special shout out to Isabella. She is the new reporter for The Republican. This is the first reporter, like full-time on-staff reporter that The Republican has ever had. And I met with her for coffee the other day, and she just was asking what are some priorities, what are focuses that the town has. They're going to be pushing significantly harder on getting more local information from towns like Avon and Plainfield, Brownsburg, so on and so forth, in the newspaper on a more frequent basis. So I appreciate her taking some time to chat with me, as well as Jerry, who owns The Republican, to put a higher emphasis on what's going on locally within government and as well as what's happening in the community. Last but not least, somebody is probably going to talk about it when you get to your updates, but Total Wine just opened up last night. And as I was taking pictures and going around, I was stopped a couple different times and I was asked if I took the photos that are on our social media outlets and on our website. I said yes, and they very kindly said they're very nice. Would you mind taking our picture as well? Which I took that as a compliment to myself, but also to the town. And I started thinking about that a little bit more. So what I've done is I've actually created an outlet at avonindiana.gov/community photos. And anytime that we have at a community event or we have a gathering of any type, a ribbon cutting ceremony, where I go and I take a plethora of photos, I'm going to make sure that I put all those photos that I can't put on social media in there. So that way the community and media can also use those photos to better represent and better show what the community does and what we look like. And there was one couple that celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary at Total Wine. So I don't know how to interpret that. I said to them, 20 years is a long time. I'm glad you're here, or 20 years is a long time. I'm glad that you're here. Do you need the wine? They just smiled and laughed and said some very kind words and grabbed a couple bottles of wine, and I'm sure that they're waking up today. So that's all that I have. I'm happy to, I could just see Ryan go, oh my gosh. I'm happy to answer any.
Thanks, Jared.
You can run if you want.
Moving on, next item is council comment liaison reports. We'll start with you, Ms. Loudon.
Been out of town on a much-needed vacation, so nothing to report.
Roger that. Mr. Roberts.
Same here. I was out of town, nothing to report.
Moving right along. Mr. Zuzen.
As Bill indicated at the Plan Commission meeting, we approved the maintenance building for the Washington Township Parks Department. The second case then was the institutional zoning and DPR for the new Avon Middle School. That received a positive recommendation from the Plan Commission. That'll be coming then to the council. August 30th, I attended a workshop, the Future of Hendricks County Workforce Summit. And the three items, topics were childcare, transportation, and affordable housing. And, I look at this is it's an issue that we all deal with, all municipalities, schools, whatever. And in my mind, I look at this as this is a Hendricks County issue, and I would like to see the county be the hub of these issues. So that was very interesting. The second or third thing then was I participated in the cornhole tournament for Employee Appreciation Week, and came in second again for the third year in a row. So I'm going to have to take lessons. And then lastly, I did attend the Town Wine and More ribbon cutting last night, and I looked at all those people there and I said, we all have the same thing in common. We have a drinking problem. But it was very interesting. It was, I saw people there that I hadn't seen in a while, but that is a great addition to our community. Talking to people, some of them had never been to one of these. Some of them would travel to Nora up there, or to even, I think there's another one up in Fishers, Noblesville area. This was the 5th one that they opened in the state of Indiana, and the 255th one they've opened throughout the country. So they were excited to be here, and I was excited to have them here. That's all I have.
Mr. Eisenbarth.
Mine's pretty simple. I've got, last Tuesday, I attended the Hendricks County Recycling District meeting. And Don, you remember, it was on January 2022 is when they had the proposal rejected for the tipping fee increase. And the only reason I bring this up about every other meeting is that it was 1992 was the last time that the rate was established, and it was established at $1. And we had one council member that said, that one commissioner that said, no, I just don't want to ever raise taxes and all that. And, after a lot of discussion, we said, hey, look, it's really affecting people outside of the county, the haulers that come in. So I made a motion that was, everyone agreed to it. And it was a resolution to have to listen to a rate increase at our next meeting, which is October 24th. It's a Tuesday at 7 a.m. It's a public meeting that's going to be held. And so then I made that resolution to go to $1.25 for the county, and then $1.50 of outside of the county. And that would raise a huge amount of money and get them back in the black. It's been running in the red for years. So I don't mean to overhit that issue, but it's kind of true to my heart. We all don't want to do those things, but by gosh, it has to be done. So that's all I have. Thanks,
Steve. Greg took a few of these. I'm sorry, attended that workforce summit as well. Greg mentioned as well, there's interesting info that was shared, some potential solutions, but as we're all aware, there's not really a single answer. And I don't know if this is a silver lining or not. These are problems that are not unique to our community. These are problems that are shared across the nation. I want to give it, Ryan did a great job last week with the Employee Appreciation Week. Thank you, Ryan. I hope everyone on our staff had a great time and feels valued. Thank you genuinely for everything that you guys do. Congratulations to Officers Stovall and Davey, this year's cornhole champs. Sorry, Greg. And sorry, Ryan, I let you down, man. We did have that Total Wine and More grand opening. It was kind of crazy. I heard reports from a number of their suits That was one of their largest turnouts, soft openings in history. So that was awesome. For everyone watching at home, 10% of all the wine sales through this Sunday will be donated back to our Avon Education Foundation. So please go buy some early Christmas gifts, or as I suggested at the thing, you could just buy a regular old Tuesday gift. Any wine purchases this weekend go back into our Avon Education Foundation. That's it for me. Moving on, the next item is our budget.
I'd
I
like to
checked-
make a motion.
I actually checked with Dan. I don't think we need to do this, or we don't need to make a motion unless there's any objections. I'd like to move that to the end. So, because a number of our audience members are probably not going to want to sit through this.
Good.
I'm sorry, Ms. Loker. Yep, we'll move on to, I'm sorry.
Rapid reflecting
I'm
flashing
so
beacon.
sorry. I skipped right. We've got that out of the way. We'll move the budget to the end. First item is award quote for rapid reflecting flashing beacon. Thank you, Julie. And Steve, I assume you're speaking to this one.
Yes. Again, Steve Moore, Public Works Director. We are working with the township to help them get a rapid flashing pedestrian beacon for the 625 crossing over by Murphy Park for the servicing the White Lake Trail. Basically, we are also getting flashers on 200 North at the Centennial Trail. And so to make it more economical, we asked for the quote for both locations, and then we're going to purchase those and get reimbursed by the township for their two signals. Any questions?
Maybe this one's for Dan. Is there any memorandum of understanding between us and the township? I want to make sure that townships don't typically deal with public works projects. I want to make sure we're going to get the funds back for that project. Is there any protection for us?
I don't know what conversation we've had.
Ryan's got it.
Yeah, I've had that discussion with the trustee. What we've actually done is we've already invoiced them. So these have some lead time on them. So we're comfortable that we will actually get paid before we actually do the installation. If they don't pay us, we're not going to do the installation. And then their site is already not compliant. This is the same issue with the speed hump or the speed table at the crosswalk. Their site's not compliant, and so they don't get their certificate of occupancy if they don't do it. So I think we feel like we have protection enough that we don't necessarily need that. And again, I think we're trying to build trust with our trustee, but I know Dan would probably say the answer is yes, we could do a memorandum of understanding too and document it if you guys want as well. But I think we feel like we've got it covered with them.
That
Have you
sounds
thought
better
about
anyway.
billing them and having them pay before we install it?
Yes.
Yeah,
That sounds like a better answer anyway. So thank you, Ryan.
And then if they decide they don't want the signal for some reason, I have another location where I can use them. So they're, we're not going to lose out no matter what.
Yeah, and it's a local vendor too, out of Greenfield, right down the road from NDOT Greenfield District, right? I'm looking at Signal Construction Incorporated.
Yeah, Charlie Tessendorf.
Yeah, they're fairly local.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
use them, not extensively, but we use them a lot. So, any questions?
Price is good. Yeah, no problems.
Any other questions or comments? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal that Steve has put for us from Signal Construction Incorporated in the amount of $26,934.
Second. Go ahead, Greg.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Tim Roberts,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
And
I
as
have one
previous,
question for Steve. You jogged my memory on another location. At a recent chamber board meeting, a topic came up at 100 North in Dan Jones, where the power station is there. You make your turn and then you go into the Avon Middle School North. If you could put a flashing light right there, because there isn't anything on that side of the road. I think it's on the north end, on the west side of the road on Dan Jones.
So we have the three approaches so that they're still in effect when you go to that leg of the intersection. So from the east, you have a light that says you're in the school zone. From the south, you have a light that says you're in the school zone. From the west, you have a light that says you're in the school zone. As you go north, you're still in the school zone. So and then as you go further north, you have a sign that tells you when you're out of the school zone. So you're covered by the other three approaches.
Well, just look at that because you got.
If
that
you
when
really
come
want
out of
it-
the
if you really
roundabout,
want
you
it,
got
Greg,
that
I can
right
get you
turn
one.
lane Right in there right away, and then you got your left through. So
Yeah.
you're the expert.
All right.
That's it.
Thanks, Steve. As previously mentioned, we're, unless there's any objections from anyone on the council, we're going to move the budget items to the end, budget presentation to the end.
It's fine.
Seeing no objections, thanks, guys. We'll move to Resolution 2023-10, excess levy appeal for 3-year growth. And Ryan?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and handle it. And if Julie wants to jump in, she's welcome to as well, or Dan or anybody else who wants to speak to it. But as you guys are aware, Greg Garitas was here and presented his recommendations on the 2024 budget to the town. And he identified in that presentation that due to the town's growth over the last 3 years, that we are eligible for an excess levy appeal. He identified that amount at $420,000 based on the formula. I attached to this a copy of the guidance from the DLGF, so that's in your packets, that kind of show the guidance from the DLGF and all the different excess levy appeals that you're eligible for. And so obviously this is one that Greg has identified and recommended that we do. In order for that appeal to go forward, the town council has to pass this resolution. As we've talked about before, doing this excess levy appeal could in fact result in a slight tax increase based on what our current assessed value is. And that was identified at approximately 0.017 cents. So if you guys pass this, we'll file it with the DLGF and it'll be reflected in our budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can I ask clarify? You said that our taxes will potentially raise by even a marginally with state tax caps. If you're at the state tax cap, you aren't paying any more property tax even with this levy appeal.
That's correct. It's a little bit of it's a confusing equation. So our tax rate would go up. It doesn't necessarily mean that people would pay more in taxes. So if you're already at your 1% property tax cap, you're already at your 2% property tax cap, it's not changing. The people who it may impact is those people at the 3% property tax cap because the town's tax rate is below $3. So there may be businesses that will pay additional taxes as a result of this.
Thank you.
Well, and the other thing is if we do not act on this, we lose this opportunity and we'll never get it back. And so, as I said earlier, our state legislature is trying to find ways to take revenue away from us, and we've got to protect ourselves as well. So I'm supportive of approving this.
I echo that with you, Greg. If we look at the township, they're likely to have a multiple larger one in this one. And so this is very reasonable.
Would anyone like to make a motion then? Any further questions? Apologies. Let me ask that first. Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the 2023-10 authorizing levy appeal.
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Tim Roberts,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Robert Pope.
4. Next item on the agenda, Resolution 2023-11, approving order of the Planning Commission. And I assume you're speaking to this one, right?
Yeah, I'll speak to this. This should be relatively easy for all of you. If you guys recall, we created a economic development area and allocation areas for the Easton Gray project. You're seeing this again simply because the boundaries of the allocation areas are changing. As I had reported to all of you previously, Easton Gray has expanded the area that they want in their phase 1. So it's actually to our benefit. They're incorporating an even larger area. But in order to capture that, we also have to change the boundaries. So this is one of the steps in that process. The first step is for the Redevelopment Commission to do a declaratory resolution, which they have done. Then the Plan Commission, it goes to the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission has to make a determination that the growth is consistent with our comprehensive plan. And obviously we've already approved Easton Gray, so we believe that to be the case. So the planning commission did approve it as well. The next step then is it comes to the town council, and the town council has to affirm the decision of the planning commission and say that this is an area that growth is reasonable. And so again, I think this is a really easy decision for you. After you approve it, it goes back to the redevelopment commission, who actually has to have a public hearing and pass a confirmatory resolution, and then it'll actually come back to you guys again to finally adopt it. So this is kind of the third step in a 5-step process. I'm happy to answer any questions.
As the liaison to the redevelopment commission, at that meeting, there was really no discussion or no issues regarding this, and they approved it unanimously. As well as then when they made the presentation, being on the plan commission, it was presented to us there as well, and it was unanimously approved to move it to the council. So.
I have no questions.
If no further questions, would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion. I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-11, approving the order of the plan commission.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Tim Roberts,
4.
Next item, final reading ordinance 2023-15, amending the stop and street ordinance for Oxford Park.
Yes, this ordinance addresses the stop and speed regulation of the new streets which are in the Oxford Park annexation. You have already accepted dedication of these streets, and this is merely recognizing that those streets are now subject to our stop and speed regulation. This is second reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No questions.
Ryan, my only question, when I look at the budget, and I can't put my finger on it right now, we had linear miles in there from different years, and I don't believe we increased it by bringing this in. So is that something we need to update and revise?
We do, yeah. Actually, Steve's got Jordan, our new GIS technician, working on that right now. It's been a couple years since we did a mileage submission to NDOT, so he's working on that mileage submission. We'll get it done before the end of this year, and then it'll reflect in next year's numbers. And so, yes, we'll add all that.
And then Ryan, this naturally, the Pacer ratings go on with this location too. They continue. Yeah.
Correct, yes. Same issue. Steve, actually, December 1st, we have to resubmit all of our Pacer ratings to LTAP. So Steve will analyze those and give them ratings, and we'll fit them right into our maintenance improvement plan.
Thanks.
Any further questions?
I make a motion, we approve ordinance 2023-15, amending the stop streets and intersections schedule as presented.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Tim Roberts,
4.
Don Loudon.
4.
Next item on the agenda, final reading ordinance 2023-16, amending salary ordinance.
Yeah, I reported on this to the council 2 weeks ago. We were making a couple amendments. Bill just spoke to it a little bit ago, that we did reduce the planning and building department by a half FTE, and we combined the duties of our MS4 coordinator as code enforcement. So we had to make a slight amendment to that person's salary. We also had to, Steve recommended some changes to the project coordinator position, which is our admin assistant. And she's been doing a great job, and so we felt like she deserved a little bit of extra pay, so we put that in there as well. Since Steve also lost the position then of the MS4 coordinator, Steve has asked for, and you will notice also that it's in this year's budget, is to add a position for a public works technician. And so we also added that position into here so that Steve could go and do that. We will wait on actually fulfilling that position until after we've gotten through the budget process to assure that you guys actually adopted in next year's budget. We obviously don't want to hire someone at the end of this year and not be able to sustain that for next year. So we'll work on, I think Steve does have a job description already, but we'll work on getting that ready. And then once the budget's approved, we'll look at hiring that. So we may only have a couple months worth of salary for that position in 2023. Happy to answer any
Wasn't
questions.
Drew the MSG coordinator?
He was, that's correct.
He's not doing that anymore?
He is continuing to do it.
Okay. I misunderstood you then.
Any other questions? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-16, amending the salary ordinance.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Don Loudon,
Four.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Tim Roberts,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
Next item, final reading ordinance 2023-17, institutional rezoning for Avon Middle School. Mr. Peoples.
Bill Peoples, I'm the planning director of the town. This is a request to rezone about 79 acres, 78.87 acres from agricultural AG zoning classification to the institutional zoning classification to allow for the construction of a new middle school at about 1204 South County Road 450 East, out there near 100 South and 450 East. There is no real history on this property other than the annexation that you all did a few years ago. There is pending on the property an administrative plat. This administrative plat doesn't subdivide the property. It establishes easements, rights of way dedication, and those sorts of things. It was just the easiest way to establish those on the property rather than going through a series of instruments, which can get confusing and those sorts of things. So it's a much simpler way of establishing easements on it. And that map A 2308 is pending. As I said, it's a request to rezone about 78.87 acres from ag to institutional to construct a 202,090 square foot middle school on this property. The interesting thing, it's zoned ag, so why the rezoning? It's zoned ag, and ag is one of the, I think, 2 zoning classifications that doesn't allow public and private school as a permitted primary use. So they had to rezone it out of the ag zoning district into a new zoning district in order to establish the middle school at the site. The benefit to the school and to any institutional use to a rezone to the institutional zoning classification is the ordinance allows you to combine the development plan review petition and the institutional rezoning with the same petition. And so they can avoid having to then get this approved and come back to the plan commission with a DPR petition. In the institutional rezoning, that DPR petition is called an institutional use master plan. And what that means for you, the council, and also for the plan commission is they have all the information that you would normally have with a development plan review petition to make a decision on this site. So you're not looking at some sort of one-page conceptual plan. You're looking essentially at a development plan review of this site, which includes stormwater drainage, photometric plan. It includes dedication per the thoroughfare plan. It includes a traffic study, which was done. And so all of these things were done with this petition, even though it is a rezoning. So you're getting much more information on this one than you would typically get. The plus side for the school is by avoiding the DPR side, they can go straight to a pre-construction meeting and start constructing the school and clearing the site right, as soon as we do the few issues that we've really got to take care of on this one. Thoroughfare plan, or the comp plan out here is agricultural. That does reflect the council's policy to keep the southwest part of the side of the town agricultural in character. I think that was a commitment that was made during the annexation of this area. Some people would argue, and in fact, a remonstrator did argue that a school use is not consistent with the agricultural recommendation. I do not agree with that. School uses and church uses are fairly low intensity institutional land uses. They have historically been located in residential and agricultural areas. And in fact, if you go back to the Northwest Ordinance, not to bore you, there was a township that was specifically designated for schools. And more often than not, if you go to that township or that section, you'll find the old high school still sitting there. So schools are consistent with rural areas, and even though this is a large school reflecting the suburban character of our community, I do not believe that a request for a school in this area is inconsistent with the plan. Thoroughfare plan shows both 450 east, 1,100 south as collector streets. This is a 100-foot right-of-way. Typical requirement would be a 50-foot right-of-way. I believe along 450 east, they've shown a 58-foot right-of-way so that they can incorporate some of the required street improvements in this particular development within the right-of-way without having to go across the street and get right-of-way from the people across the street. So there should not be any improvements or any other sorts of right-of-way needs on the east side of 450 East to accommodate the transportation impacts or the transportation improvements that are required with this development. Traffic study was completed in accordance with this request. It's been reviewed. We actually brought in Hendricks County Highway in this one because the Hendricks County's road is impacted. Road network is impacted by this development, and they have made some requests of us, and the Plan Commission did incorporate some of those requests into their condition that they forwarded to you. And we have had our consultant look at it. The Department of Public Works has also looked at the traffic study, and they've made some requests from the school, and the school has accommodated those requests. The Plan Commission did hear this. They heard this at their August 28th meeting. They forwarded that with a favorable recommendation by a vote of 4-2. And they did forward that subject to a condition. And I'm not going to read that particular condition because on your stations you have a slight amendment to that. When the Plan Commission heard this, there were a couple of conditions that were still in flux. We didn't really have the information that we needed on this one. The first condition that was in flux dealt with what the Hendricks County Highway Department was going to need to install some traffic calming in the subdivision to the north along their 100 South that flows through that subdivision. The Hendricks County Highway Department has since done some research on that. I included their correspondence to you. It shows that they've found that the traffic calming that they intend to install is about $15,000 for each, and that they intend to put 3 of these traffic calming measures on that street. So they're asking for $50,000 to be placed in escrow or by some other means for the county to use to install those traffic calming measurements within that subdivision. And if the actual construction costs are less, the unused funds will be returned to the school system. So the last part of it has been amended. Instead of what the Plan Commission has forwarded to you, it says traffic calming improvements to 3 locations shall either be installed along County Road 100 South in accordance with the requirements of the Hendricks County Highway Department, or $50,000 shall be placed in escrow or some other means in order for the Hendricks County Highway Department to install said measures. And that would replace the condition that was forwarded to you that acceptable traffic calming improvements shall be installed along County Road 100 South in accordance with the requirements of the Hendricks County Health Department, or I'm sorry, Highway Department. The second issue that was with the conditions that were forwarded to you was that at that time we didn't have a good estimate. One, there are some, the town wanted some improvements at 450 and 200 South. And the school was concerned that those improvements were well off-site, and they were concerned about conducting those improvements, whether they had the authority to conduct those improvements because they were so far removed from the actual school site itself. So in this particular case, the town said, okay, that makes sense, we'll do them, but we need a restrictive donation or an infrastructure contribution in order to do that. Public Works has reviewed that, and I believe I forwarded in your packet an information, the email that Public Works forwarded with their estimate of the cost of that. And the cost of that would be about $58,808. to do the improvements that Public Works desires at 450 East and County Road 200 South. The condition that was forwarded to you by the Plan Commission said a restrictive donation for improvements at the intersection of County Road 450 East with 200 South shall be submitted to the town, and the town shall program and construct those improvements. The amended condition says an infrastructure contribution in the amount of $56,808 shall be conveyed to the town for improvements at the intersection of County Road 450 East with County Road 200 South, and the town shall program and construct those improvements. It just eliminates some of the uncertainty. The Plan Commission was concerned about forwarding you conditions that were a little bit loose, and so I told them that we would have these conditions locked down by the time it came to your meeting. Yes, sir.
My only question regarding the email from Mr. Moore to you, I believe, his calculations was $72,000.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't we accept 72,000 versus 56,808?
Historically, what we do on, I can let Steve talk to you. I can also say historically what we've done on traffic, on these sort of infrastructure contribution is we make a determination of how much additional traffic, what percentage of that traffic is caused by the land use. So I think Brookstone or one of the subdivisions, they had an offsite improvement to a roundabout. They only had to pay for a portion of that, and that portion was the portion that they were contributing to it. Steve had done the calculation. He indicated that about 78% of the schools, of the traffic that's going to be impacted at that intersection was caused by the school. And so because it was 78.9%, he took 78.9% of that total improvement cost. So the remainder is what the town would pay, and it's essentially background or existing traffic at that location.
Thank you.
The Plan Commission did approve the institutional master plan. They approved it subject to the 3 conditions that the Plan Commission always attaches to development plan review petitions. And they added another one, and that is that you all have to approve the zoning. So if the zoning isn't approved, then obviously the institutional master plan isn't approved. I think I've said enough. The petitioner is here. If you want, right back here, if you want to give them the opportunity to speak. And I am, of course, available for any questions that you have.
Just one question. So I'm looking at the county engineer's letter. It's kind of, it says yet to be determined on the traffic calming. Did they give any criteria? Are they looking at volumes or any discussion that came out as far as warrants for saying that it triggers that they want to do up to 3 of those? Is there any?
There wasn't a specific trigger for it. I know that there was a lot of concern on the part of that neighborhood that there was going to, one, there's an increase in traffic through the neighborhood. I think that's sort of axiomatic.
Sure.
There was a divergence in the opinion between our Public Works Department and Highway as to how much traffic is going to come through that subdivision. I think the Highway Department thought that there was going to be more than what we predicted, or what we agreed to anyway in the traffic study. And I believe that the traffic study was amended to sort of raise that a little bit. Now, the school, we came through what we call a transportation catchment area. The school initially, now they do have to go through redistricting and all that other stuff. But we just needed an idea. And so it basically, we believe that the catchment area for the transportation for this school will be everything south of the railroad track. So the other 2 middle schools will share the area north of the railroad track, and this school will serve everything south of the railroad track. Now, obviously the schools has a lot of work to do as far as construction and redistricting to get to the actual numbers, but that's what we use to determine it. So we felt that the vast majority of traffic was going to come from the east and the south.
Okay.
On this.
Yeah, the reason I asked, because I know Ryan way back when Schneider did our local one, they had criteria. They were looking at the speeds and the volumes and make sure that it's compatible with the residents. And they may not have anything that restrictive and all, but when you put something like this, some people like it, some people hate it.
Right.
And so it'd be interesting to see if they put some reasons behind it so that they don't get residents more turn negative on it.
Traffic calming is always one of those,
I know.
one of those difficult issues because you usually have to deal with snow plows and school buses and fire trucks and those sorts of things who typically don't like traffic calming on the streets. And then, of course, the residents who don't want speeding traffic going through their subdivision. So, yeah, it's Hendricks County's road.
Okay.
And so the highway department was really, really concerned about traffic through that subdivision.
Okay, no, enough said on that.
Question that I have is regarding the traffic circle that is going to be built by the school.
That is, yes, the traffic circle is going to be built by the school. Public Works is coordinating with a local engineering firm to do a conceptual design to assist it. And of course, the school system itself has hired a really good engineering firm who can bring that to fruition.
And then as you indicated, the left and right turn lanes will be on the west side of 450, which is the school side of 450, not the east side, which is the residents' east side.
Right.
And then lastly, the $50,000 that we're going to put in escrow for the county, is that to address the L curve at 100 South and 400?
The traffic circle, I believe, 415, that's a traffic circle. That's where the traffic circle goes, 100 and 450?
No, the 50,000 in escrow would be for the 3 calming
Right.
locations.
It would be for 3 calming. Now, the highway department, we talked, or Public Works, I should say, and the highway department spoke of options for traffic calming, road diets. I think they're probably going with some sort of speed hump or other sorts of thing through there. But yeah, that 50,000 is just for those 3 speed, that traffic calming through the subdivision. And I'm not sure if we would, I think the preference would be that be between the school and the county so that we don't become like a third party in that, but that would be up to them.
Oh, yeah.
Bill, you've mentioned a few things. I want to make sure we cover the 5 criteria for rezones. You mentioned comp plan. I agree with you. I think it's consistent. I'm going to ask you about character surrounding. Will this rezone be consistent with the character surrounding this development?
Well, yeah, it will be. I mean, when you think about its location, it's really at the fringe of the suburban development in that area. So there's a subdivision right to the north. There's some rural single family to the east. And you get to the south of this, it's definitely south and west of this. It's definitely rural. So it's a transitional area, but you're dealing with the school. The school has put the building itself as far east as they really can, and they've surrounded that with their athletic fields. And so there's a significant amount of green space in between the school and the rural areas. So it'll make a good transition in that area.
Thank you. Next one is, I'm trying to work, is this the most desirable use? As there's been some promises made to keep this area prepared for estate homes. This particular plot of land is obviously not being developed for an estate home. Is this still the most desirable use in that plot of land?
Well, I think, yeah, if you were looking strictly by most desirable use, you'd probably think agricultural or estate homes. However, the school system as a unit of government needs to provide services to its citizens. So I would consider it similar to a police substation or a fire station or one of those things. When the superintendent of instruction here and says that he needs a new middle school and this is the best place to put it, I just have to defer to him. And I don't think it's disruptive, and I think it's a necessary improvement for the community.
Yep.
It's not like they purchased it and that was a change. you know, they already own the property.
Yeah.
Right, I think I want to clarify that comment because I know Dawn and I were part of that when we went through the annexation process. That property that we talked about is to the west of the school property. It was
Forgive me.
never incorporated, the school's property was never incorporated into those conversations or discussions. This is when I believe it was Arbor Homes wanted to come in and buy that farm ground and put high-density housing there. That's when those conversations were had.
Well, then
So it
to
had
the
nothing to
question,
do
I
with-
would believe a school would be a more desirable use, at least with the surrounding neighbors than a high-density neighborhood.
Well, when you look at the picture too, they've got a lot of green space that surrounds the school itself and their facilities, softball, baseball, practice field will not have lights on them. So, you know, you're not going to have evening events
yeah.
with bright lights shining, you know, Friday night lights and anything like that. So, and the other thing I liked about it, like I said, I was on the plan commission, they're moving all their egress to their side of the road.
Right.
And so they're not going to inconvenience the people on the east side. And some of those people were here that night and that was their concern. So in my opinion, they've addressed the comments and the issues that we've asked, you've asked, and what the some of the remonstrators asked already.
And also though, not just to the south where the sports fields are located, to the north there that abuts 100 on the north side of that road where it's Liberty Meadows and things like that. There's a large amount of green space there that even buffers before you get to the school area, the way they've laid it out on their parcel.
Yeah, there's a good buffer. Yeah.
Really
To the
good
north.
buffer. Yeah,
Yeah.
to the north.
I got two more for you, Bill. You started to mention it with the schools are the ones who are really going to determine, you know, their needs for the growth that's happened in this community. I would believe they have done the due diligence to determine that this is the most responsible need to address that growth. Would you agree that them needing to put their school in that place is consistent with responsible growth for the community?
Oh, well, it has to be, yeah. I mean, the school has a need. This is sort of the first phase of a fairly extensive project of building, of changing the nature of the school and also building capacity in other schools, which we've had discussions with the school system in anticipation of the middle school being constructed and going to sort of a 3 middle school system. And so, yeah, the school, the superintendent, I mean, the school board hires a superintendent to do these things. And he has a assistant superintendent and an extensive staff to do that work. So yeah, I believe that's necessary.
Last one, I'll let you off the hook. What is your opinion? What is your opinion on the conservation of property values with a middle school being placed on this development? This development on this land?
I think Dawn could testify to this. I would say a large portion of everybody's property value in this community is heavily involved in the quality of the school system. And so if the school system is doing what it can to increase the quality of education it provides the students, then it will at least maintain the property values of this jurisdiction, if not raise them.
I would agree with you.
Well, we always talk about economic development and we always say is it the town that brings development here? Typically, the first thing out is the schools.
Oh, yeah.
And their education and their rankings and ratings, so.
And the marching band.
Okay, it's the marching band and then the school, okay.
That was the last for me. I like to cover through those, just to make sure we've got to backstop them. I want to keep your billing hours down as low as possible, Dan. No offense. Are there any further questions for staff? Are there any questions for the petitioner?
There's been sensitivity to the right of way. There's everything we've already gone through. So no.
All right. Well, would
I make a
anyone-
motion, we approve ordinance 2023-17, the institutional rezoning for Avon Middle School as presented.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, go ahead. Dawn beat me in there. Go ahead, Dawn.
All listed as a tie.
We have a first and a second. Julie, would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Don Loudon,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Tim Roberts.
4.
Next item, introduction ordinance 2023-18, amending the travel per diem. Dan, I assume you're speaking to this one. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, this ordinance would establish per diem for travel and establish some rules about how that per diem would be applied. The amounts of the per diem are tied to the state standard for state employees. Some of the feedback we received from your department heads was that they didn't want employees to skip meals and congregate this money into one. That defeats the whole purpose of having a meal by meal per diem. There are some policies which have a day per diem for all meals and don't make a distinction, but this type of meal by meal per diem makes that distinction. So this amendment would implement that policy in order to have an internal control on the amount of money that employees can have as reimbursable for such travel expenses. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
The only thing that I wanted to at least mention was, in here it says fiscal year of 2024, and I understand it's for moving forward, but that would require us to update it every year. Could we say something like for the applicable fiscal year, so it doesn't have to be updated each year, or?
Well, you certainly could. The thing that I would ask you to consider or weigh is that because we thought about that in drafting was if you refer to the standard so that you don't have to change it from time to time, which is certainly more convenient, we get to skip that ordinance revision every year. That is easier for the town council. But I place a high value on these ordinances that become part of the employee handbook, being able to, for our employees to be able to go to the handbook and see what the rule actually is. And so we wrote it out to say what it is. We said where it comes from, but we really said this is what it's going to be so that it has that information available effect for department heads who are dealing with their employees, for the clerk treasurer's office who has to administer this internal control. And so it was a trade-off a little bit on our drafting end was we kind of weighed that and said, what's better? Certainly, it's completely up to the council, but that was our approach. The other thing I would mention is that I've dealt with this state per diem for some time. The other thing I'm careful about is I don't know what the state's going to do or what they're going to adopt, and I wouldn't want you guys to feel like you're trapped to stick with that standard because I've seen it move quite a bit simply depending on who the governor is. Okay, this is part of an executive order, and you would think these wouldn't change much, but boy, it really has. So I still think that although these guidelines, if you guys say you like them, fabulous. But if there comes a day where you think that the state administration has lost its head, you're the local legislature, you do what you'd like to do. That was our thinking, but so it's really up to you, but that was our approach.
And just to kind of add to what Dan was just saying, from the initial draft that they did a while back, those numbers changed just from what you see in front of you. So those updates were just made a week or two ago because it changed that quickly.
Because the state changed
Yeah,
their.
so you want it to be reviewed often for that reason.
I can see the reason why you put a dollar amount on there, so then the staff knows, hey, this is relative to this.
Well, that's a question I get asked every time someone goes, and it's most of the time it's the police department, because they do the most training of the whole town, as they should. But those guys will come and they'll ask for the credit card or ask, what do I do? How much am I allowed to spend?
Yep.
And this is great because then they just know, okay, I've got $10 or $12 I can have, my lunch or whatever. And I don't have to say, just don't go crazy. Because right now I'm just giving them a card and saying, don't go crazy until this is passed. So it's a great guideline. Funny you should ask that, a $51 steak for dinner. I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah.
Any further questions for staff?
This is a final reading?
No, just an introduction.
Up, all right.
Let the record show ordinance 2023-18 as introduced. We're going to go back a little bit and now begin our 2024 budget presentation. And Ryan, I assume we're going to start with you.
Yes, I will start. I know we've talked about this a little bit. I know we've been here for a while, so this is really the initial introduction of the budget to all of you, and there's a lot of information here, and we don't intend to go line by line. I will allow you guys to review that information over the next couple of weeks. If you guys have questions, you're welcome to talk to or meet with department heads. So really what I'm going to do is give a summary of what changed really from last year's budget. And then again, we'll do our public hearing and discuss it further at our September 21st meeting as well. So you guys will live and breathe this the next 3 council meetings. So really just big picture, we are going to have about a $31.5 million budget. It's slightly different than what you guys were just presented. Actually, last time, if you guys recall, we just did the resolution. So the general fund budget will be $8.12 million. So when we update this information, it'll be reflected as that in 2 weeks. So on the general fund side, I'm going to talk to it. Sean gave me permission to just go ahead and cover his as well. So, but if you guys have questions, you're welcome to let them pop up. And I just see a thumbs up from Steve, so he's doing it too. But I'm going to make Shelby get up and do hers because she wanted to do it. General fund, again, we made some general evaluations of our employees just based on cost of living adjustments. What we've done is a 4% cost of living. For most of the employees, we do evaluate our positions all the time. And if there's changes to people's job duties, or if there's people who are paid below what's typical of other people, we try to make those adjustments. There are a few of those positions in the budget. If you're looking as you go line by line, you'll note those. I've noted any positions that have been amended other than 4%. We do, even though those are cost of living adjustments in the budget, it is still at the discretion of the department head to decide whether to give that cost of living adjustment. And the department heads do all make that decision based on the evaluations of the employees, which we do on an annual basis. In general, I kind of had a statement here about our staff has grown. This will kind of just come across in everything that we do when we talk about liability insurance. And as we've added more staff, that means we need more supplies, we need more other things like that. And so we evaluate that based on what we've spent from year to year, and we've made some adjustments to those. I listed some of the ones that I thought were the bigger areas: computer consulting, computer replacement. Obviously, if we have more employees, we've got to get them new computers when we do that. Insurance, and again, not just health insurance, but liability insurance as well. Workers' comp, as we have more employees, that means our workers' comp is more expensive, and that's just not, we have growth that we assume in those just because our rates may go up or down, but more employees mean that our payroll is higher, which also then impacts our workers' comp. And then, like I said, supplies, utilities, legal, and even financial consulting. As you guys are aware, we've worked with AJAA to become a part of the town. Well, now that means Julie also has assumed some additional responsibilities, which means on our financial end, when she reconciles her books, that means she's got additional costs. So all of those things, as we grow, they do kind of start to add up a little bit. This is something you probably rarely ever see in a budget, is that we actually reduced a half of a full-time employee in the planning and building department. We talked about that earlier in the salary ordinance adjustment. That was consolidating those 2 positions. So that resulted in a reduction of a position. One thing you'll see that's new here is we haven't had for probably the last 15 years any general fund for the Parks Department. And we've had some conversations over the last couple of years as our Parks Department is growing, and as we're planning to bring new parks online next year, that means we're going to have to add additional staff. Food and beverage has been fantastic and solid, but at some point, food and beverage isn't going to be able to keep sustaining that operational growth. And so you'll see that again in the Parks Department budget. When you look at it, we break down what's operational, what's capital, and what's debt. And so we have added 2 positions for the Parks Department due to the parks expansion, which will come from the general fund. Liability, as you guys are all aware, last year we had a fairly significant jump in our liability insurance. Actually, at your work session in October, Highland will be attending your meeting to give you some updates. We've gotten some good news. Our workers' comp, we've actually had a good year in terms of workers' comp. So we actually expect that to be pretty flat. We've also heard that we expect our cyber insurance to be flat. We did have some losses on the liability side from Astra, and so we do expect some increase there. I don't expect a 20% increase, but we've actually had to increase the budget, and this was something you brought up last year, Dawn, that we ended up more than what we budgeted last year for our liability insurance. So I had to adjust up for that, plus what we think will go up this year. So while a 20% liability insurance increase looks huge, it's really not as big. Part of that is our increase from last year that now we have to accommodate. If you guys remember, we're kind of always paying our liability insurance a year ahead of ourselves. So
Are you going to have information then where we subrogate to our insurance carrier for them to go out and process the claims that are outstanding that we haven't gotten reimbursed yet from the other insurance companies? That always seems to be a gray area where we don't have that information. Brian will bring it up. I've brought it up, and I think they need to be prepared to provide us some feedback. Maybe not right now, but go back to last year and all the things that were outstanding when they made their presentation. What's transpired to now?
yeah, I'll make a note when he comes October, I'll have him bring that. He did prepare a report for you guys last year. And so I'll have him update that and have him bring it with him in October.
Thank you.
On the health insurance front, I am happy to report, again, AIM Medical Trust is still our health insurance provider. And so they anticipated a 8.1%. They give us a budget number, but we did actually get back our actual number, and it's 7.6%. So actually in your next version of the budget, this will be amended, and it'll actually go down to 7.6%. And I know this is already, I've had a couple employees ask this as well, but just for the council's knowledge, the question is, how does that 7.6% get passed on? Do the employees absorb it, or does the town absorb it? And the way our insurance is set up is we have 3 different plans, and the town pays a certain percentage of each of those plans. And so when our insurance goes up, the town absorbs the additional cost for our piece, but the employee absorbs the additional cost for their piece as well. So that increase is shared by both the town and the employee. On the police department side, again, I know we've talked about this, but our goal has been to hire 2 new police officers every year. And so we are proposing 2 additional police officers this year. And the police department has also requested a civilian position for an intelligence officer. Those will be split between the general fund and the public safety lit. If you guys recall, last year, the county actually adopted a public safety lit. We only got about 90,000 this year, but next year we're projected to get 200,000. So I think 1 officer in the intelligence officer will be in the lit, and then we'll have that other police officer position in the general fund. As always, as Brian and Sean report to you all the time, increasing the base pay for police officers to remain competitive is important. I believe they've done a $5,000 increase, again, just to keep up with what the base pay for the police officers is. And that remains one of our biggest expenses, but also one of the most important things we can do to remain competitive and get good applicants applying for our police department.
So has that helped us then still be successful in retaining our officers? We're not losing anybody going somewhere else for a higher pay?
There are plenty of other agencies that are still paying quite a bit higher, but it makes us more competitive. There's no guarantee that you can prevent anybody from.
But some of our other benefits are better than other benefits at other agencies as well. I just want to make certain that, I mean, we've worked really hard to get where we're at, and I don't want us going backwards. I want us to keep building on that and going forward.
Sure. Yeah, so there are some areas in our benefit package that we excel in, and there are some that we are behind in. And then there's some areas that we're just not thinking out of the box right now on. And we are coming up with some other ideas for the future to try to attract candidates and transfers from other departments as well. But it is a slow, steady process, and we have to do it carefully so that we don't exceed our resources in the budget, but at the same time, still try to remain competitive. There is one agency that recently just advertised a hiring of police officers at 77,000. So by adding this 5,000, we thought we were going to be keeping up pretty good. If we add this 5,000, we're going to be about 7,000 behind now. So we're still playing the catch-up game.
So are we giving you all the tools that you and Dave and Brian need to go out and find the best officers out there for Avon?
I think that we're doing a really good job. Obviously, you've seen our candidates, you've seen the officers that we brought in here. You've seen other agencies in the news where they've had officers that have been transferred in from other agencies and they didn't work out for whatever reason. We haven't had those problems. We do a really good, thorough background investigation. We use the tools that you give us, the resources that you give us to attract those people to get them here. And so far, knock on wood, we've been able to keep them here, aside from a few problematic employees over the last several years that are no longer with us.
Thank you,
Sean, in prior years, you've spoken to some concern about raising the base price or the base salary for our people, and then that's narrowing the gap of the higher levels of officers. Is that still a concern with this increase?
No, if you look at the rate there, it comes out to about a $2.40 raise for everyone. Now that percentage is different for patrolmen all the way up to the chief of police. But what that does is it maintains that same gap that we have now so that we don't create those gaps that are really narrow between ranks and then big spaces of gap that are between some of the other ranks. So it should be very consistent, should stay very consistent.
So increasing just for the base officer pay, the 5,000, that doesn't take away part of that gap?
That increase would apply to the entire department, not just the police officers.
Okay,
I think is that the question that you're asking?
yes. It just said increase base police officer. So I didn't know if that was just your new hires that you were increasing by
No,
the
that's
5,000.
for all of the officers across the board.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that may have been the way I wrote it up, Dawn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was what they actually budgeted was $5,000 to the base for every rank, including the police chief and his deputy chiefs.
Okay,
And then when you work out the percentage backwards from there, it's
sure.
slightly different a lot different for me than it is
Right.
for that
Yeah.
base patrolman.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The council had brought up previously as well, if there was a way to try to pay our plan commission and BZA members more. And I think in the past, we weren't able to do that. In this year's budget, we were able to accommodate that. So we propose increases to the plan commission and the BZA pay. The BZA was being paid $50 and we've shown it as increased to $100. And then the plan commission, we increased from $100 to $150. So again, we feel like that's important to being able to attract. We're asking those people to make really important decisions for our town. And we want to attract quality people who are willing to do it. And quite honestly, even $100 and $150 isn't enough compensation for what they put themselves through.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's really the least we
having
can
sat
do.
on that board, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can agree. I think you would
At
too.
least I feel good when I sit at home on the couch for 5 hours looking at the plan.
Looking at the
commission.
plans, at least you're working for $3 an hour at least. We talked earlier, and even when Greg was here, one of the changes we had to do this year was a reduction in the edit fund. So one of the things we had to do was reduce some of our expenditures. And again, we talked about this back when we started our communications department, that we had to be careful about adding salaries to the edit and that could drain it down. So we were able to this year actually move the communications director's position and pay and benefits all out of the edit, and we moved that into the general fund. So obviously that was a fairly substantial hit to the general fund, but we needed to do that to reduce the edit fund. And again, if you guys go look at our fund sheet, you'll notice that our fund balance has been reducing in edit. And so that was kind of a step we felt like we had to make. We're going to retain that position. We think he's been pretty valuable and he's worthy of that money. We're just going to pay him from a different account line is all.
He's listening. He is listening.
As you guys are aware, we're in the process of starting our comp plan update. We budgeted $75,000 this year, and then our goal was to also budget then $75,000 next year. That was kind of our expectation that plan would cost about $150,000. So this was kind of our plan all along, and so we do have $75,000 in the general fund as well to complete the comprehensive plan update. Real briefly on the non-general fund, we basically did the same thing with pay, liability insurance and health insurance. And then I'll turn it over to Shelby to do a quick walkthrough of what she's doing with her budget.
You just could have kept going. So I have the food and beverage fund, the recreation impact fee fund, the tree mitigation fund, and the new park recreation fund. So with food and beverage, we've increased funding for additional programming and events. We're really trying to ramp up what we're doing, what we're providing to the community. So I wanted to give them a little bit more leniency on what we can provide. We have budgeted for a park improvement bond, which will allow us to begin construction on some of our park properties finally. Funding for an addition and updated security equipment and wayfinding on trails. This will be in conjunction with working with the police department, the fire department. We have no wayfinding on the White Lick Creek Trail. So working on updating those areas for security. Continuing investment in trail and sidewalk design and construction. That's forever ongoing. So we will always have that in our budget. Funding for the National Fitness Campaign Fitness Court. I had talked to most of you that were council members last year about this, and we kind of tabled it, but I think it's really something that we need to bring to the community. So I've put it in here. And then replacement of equipment. We have a dump truck with a snowplow that is almost as old as the town. So I would like to allow my staff to have some updated equipment, and then purchasing 2 new mowers are the biggest things in the food and beverage fund. Do we have any questions about that one before I move on? Okay. Yep. Believe it or not, we have an amazing communications department, so we don't have to do that much outside advertising. We do, you know, print material hasn't really been successful for us, so we do a lot of in-house stuff when it comes to printing and advertising. All right, moving on to the recreation impact fee, which is RIF. We have, yeah, no, I'm done. No. You were the council member I said wasn't here. It's something that I'll present at a later time to you guys. Yeah, you're good. The recreation impact.
I do have a question, because
my
I was going to ask you about,
Lanta.
I didn't see the pickleball courts in here. Is
Yeah.
it something, you're going to cover that somewhere else?
Funding for park improvement bond.
Okay.
That'll be within that. Are we good? All right. Recreation impact fee, investment in trail and sidewalk design. That is something that the RIF fund can pay for. Design is expensive, construction is expensive, so I do split those costs. And then a new RIF study update with the addition of our recreation department and bringing sports on. We could use those RIF dollars for some of that, so updating that plan would be very important. Any questions on that fund?
It's just on the tournament expenses. Explain that.
Oh, the what?
Tournament.
Tournament expenses? They are not on that.
I'm looking at something else.
The recreation impact fee?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Park recreation. Got it.
which I'll talk about right now. Thanks for leading me into that, Tim. With that, this is the new fund that we've created that you guys approved at the last meeting. So funding for personnel, funding for coaches and player training, funding for groundskeeping, equipment, uniforms, awards, and then funding for facility rental, which we have a contract with the schools. Thank you, schools. You're still here for that. Good. The tree mitigation fund is the last fund. I don't think we've used this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we are Tree City USA. We're very proud of that. We've been that for 17 years in a row now. So funding for tree planting, that's something that we have to maintain. We have to plant a certain number of trees every year. So that will come from the tree mitigation fund next year.
If you guys recall, Reagan Logistics cut down a bunch of trees when they built the warehouses, and our ordinance requires if they're unable to plant trees on their property, they can make a contribution to our tree mitigation fund. And so they made over $100,000 contribution to the tree mitigation fund. So you won't necessarily see that all the time. You may see it for the next 2 years while we try to spend down that money. But our plan is to use some of that money to then do the landscaping and stuff at our parks as we're doing some of that. So again, we're trying to spread out that cost to where we can.
Good.
Did you
Any
cover
more
the
questions?
pickleball courts then?
It was in the park improvement bond,
Yeah, the pickleball courts will be
Yeah.
part of our park improvement bond, so,
which is under food and beverage.
which is under food and beverage. So that's our plan, is to put that cost there.
So there's more than that in there though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine details.
I found it down, it's like
It was like, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Shelby.
So then moving on, the next fund is TIF. And again, a couple things in there. These shouldn't be projects that are surprising to you. These are based on the feedback we got from the town council on the capital improvement plan and your guys' rankings. We put some money in there to remodel the court space. Again, our court is closing at the end of this year. So I guess I didn't mention that in the general fund either, but the court, there's no longer any expenses for the court in the general fund. So we'd like to repurpose that space and use it and dedicate that to the police department. So we'll work with them to remodel. We're proposing to use TIF for that. We also have our matching, our Dan Jones Phase 2 project bids in November. So we're hoping to pay for a portion of that project out of this year's money, and then the rest will have to come out of next year's money. We're continuing to work on the engineering and the right-of-way funding for Dan Jones Road Phase 3, which is from US 36 to 100 North. Next year, we would just have PE and right-of-way with construction the following year. We've been providing the school funding for technology and for cameras. There's $100,000 in there. We'd like to continue doing that. I know Greg heard a presentation. The school did ask for some assistance in their one-to-one computer program. We'd like to try to find some additional funding for them, but as you guys are aware, with all the projects that we have going on, we think it may be a little bit challenging next year to assist them in that, but we did at least leave that $100,000 in there to assist the school with technology.
Can we just, instead of identifying it as technology, let them use it for what they see fit? So if they
Yes.
want to use it for their one-to-one.
Correct, yes.
Do that.
Yep. And then you'll notice, Steve has done a lot of paving in the TIF district this year. And so we try to continue to do that. It really becomes part of our match for our CCMG grant. And so we really try to partner that. And if Steve's been super successful the last 2 years, almost getting $1 million. And Julie just showed me an ACH credit that we just got our payment from NDOT for almost $600,000, which was our CCMG match this year. So Steve's done a great job of that. And we want to keep trying to have that matching funds to be able to keep those improvements going. And certainly that's a part of our economic development effort, is these areas where they're paying this TIF money, we want to make sure they have infrastructure and that it's in good condition.
Great job, Steve. Now work on $1 million for next year. Okay.
Cumulative capital development, as you guys know, we have a 5-cent tax rate that goes towards, can be for capital improvements. Most of our CCD money we use to fund our road improvements and our paving. We have also, as Brian mentioned earlier, that we've shifted some of our police vehicle purchases to CCD, which has helped us on our general fund side of the equation. And so we did, as we're adding more officers, we're buying about 4 cars a year. So we really need to do a little bit more for that. So that's been a healthy fund. And so we did increase a little bit of funding to help them purchase some additional vehicles and upfitting of their vehicles. And then finally, as you guys know, we have a town vehicle replacement program. We did replace one vehicle this year. We're adding a new employee, so we need to at least add one vehicle next year as well. So we have some money in the CCD for that. Steve, do you want to do Public Works? Or you want me to go? All right. Public Works, I think the big one, obviously, you guys are aware, Raceway and 100 North. Steve's continuing to work on the engineering for that project. We'll get into the right-of-way acquisition for that project next year. It goes to construction in 2025. Steve, we've made some substantial investments in our ADA. Our plan is almost 12 years old now, which is shocking. But Steve has recommended that we update that plan and kind of reevaluate it and give a report of the progress that we've made. But we do continue to do sidewalk and ramp replacement construction as well. Steve has really taken on the traffic signals, which has probably worn him out the last 2 years, trying to modernize and improve some of our signals to make sure that they function and work efficiently. And so we've had some increased signal maintenance costs as a result of that. We have fully funded the MIP, which you guys will notice when you look at it, there's a maintenance trend. So I know when you guys look at the one sheet, it just shows a 2,170,000 number or something like that. But if you go to the maintenance trends, then that actually shows the breakdown of what that 2,170,000 is. So you guys can look there and see that number and what's going towards paving and what's going towards pothole patching, what's going towards street sweeping and roadside mowing and all those different things that are all part of the maintenance improvement program. And then again, as we talked about earlier, we've added the half FTE position for the Public Works technician. Half of the Public Works technician is going to be paid from the stormwater utility. The other half is from MVH. So that's showing up on Steve's side of the equation. Edit, as I talked about earlier, John has encouraged us to always budget some money for job training incentive programs. Again, using the money for economic development. I've left money in there for funding for a reorganization study or a financial analysis. I know those kind of continue to be ongoing discussions. So at some point we may or may not want to do that, or we may use that money for some other kind of financial analysis that the town would choose to do. We also provide financial support to community organizations, including the Chamber of Commerce and the Hendricks County Economic Development Partnership. In what I've submitted to you guys, I've left the funding for both of those the same as what we did last year. And then we've done some increased funding for police technology as well. We're trying to grow that slightly. The stormwater utility, I will remind you guys that the Stormwater Utility Board actually sets the budget, but it does come to you guys as well. They actually approved the budget last night for the stormwater utility. It provides continued funding to address backlog capital improvement projects. We're actually starting to get to the end of that list of capital improvement projects. Steve is wrapping up the cobblestone project. The last big one that's in our queue is the Avon Heights Phase 3 project, and we finally got the right-of-way acquired for that. So that will actually bid this year and go to construction next year. That's the last really big project that we had backlogged. So we've started reaching out, and you'll probably see some effort to do some outreach to neighborhoods to identify other capital improvements that may be out there that we just don't know about. And so we'll work on that, but we're continuing to, I think Steve's doing an excellent job of addressing any stormwater issues out there.
I have a question. With the annexation of Oxford, do we put the county on notice, their stormwater, and do we get the monies that they've set aside for that development?
We will, and we've already had that conversation with Dave Gaston, who's the county surveyor. So he'll have to go through that process. We've established that we're not going to charge Oxford Park because they're already being charged by the county. So come January 1st, they'll start getting stormwater bills, and then we'll settle with the county on whatever they have remaining in that fund. Then per our agreement with them, they're supposed to pass those funds on to us.
Do we have an idea or an estimate what those dollars are?
Not yet, but we'll try to get that information from the county.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Again, due to staff reorganization, the stormwater utility had a reduction of a half FTE. We added the GIS technician this year, but then we're carrying that over into the budget. It was a new position. So we do have the GIS technician position, and he's been doing a great job for us. Steve asked for some additional funding for drainage engineering. Again, if we can have engineers, we can accelerate the pace of some of our projects. And again, Steve's done a good job. He's created a system of having 3 engineers. So when it was GRW was the only engineer doing it, some of the projects were getting backlogged, and now we're rotating them through. GRW is getting a project, Banning's getting a project, and I think Crossroads is the other engineering company. So as we get new projects, we're having those engineers get them so we can get into the pipeline and get them out and then get them to construction as quickly as possible. Again, adding that, well, I had funding to purchase a new truck in here. Steve, did I really put that in there? I was gonna say, we may not actually be purchasing it. I'll double check that one. We may not be purchasing a new truck. We may have done that already, or we may not need it now because of the reorganization. And again, funding for minor drainage repairs we do, and then we'll continue our MS4 efforts, which we're required to do by federal law. That was a lot of talking.
Any further questions? You guys were asking questions along the way, but good question. Nothing else. I guess we just need to show that the 2024 budget has been introduced. We will now jump back down. Next item is a legal counsel report. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. The last 6 weeks or so, we've been working really hard on the West Central Conservancy District case. And I am pleased to tell you that after some negotiations, West Central has agreed to move their sanitary line, which has prevented us from doing work in the Dan Jones widening project. So we believe that work begins tomorrow, and there will be no preliminary hearing on September 12th. We will keep you advised as that case continues on to final resolution, but this is a big step for us. It just kind of happened, and we wanted you to know. And that we appreciate the hard work. I know we've been, Ann and I working, Mr. Cannon and Suzanne on documents, and other members of your team pretty hard on that case. We appreciate all their help, and sorry that we've taken them away of other matters. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Next item, the second of 2 public comment opportunities. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing no rush, we'll close that section of public comment. Second opportunity, council comment. Anyone?
None.
Great questions tonight.
I just want to tell all the department heads, I know it's always a difficult thing when we do the budget every year, but I applaud you not only just for doing the budget, but for what you do throughout the year. You do a great job, and with the Employee Appreciation Week last week, it shows. And people are happy, and I talked to a few of them, certainly with our AJA acquisition, and they're just elated. So keep up the good work.
Well, Jared, you just don't know. You don't. Sincere or sarcasm, which is it?
Council calendar, your next meeting is September 21st, 7 p.m. Reminder, we just scheduled an executive session at 5:30 p.m. on September 21st as well.
Thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.